guys, welcome to Thriving Nuggets YouTube channel with me, Anja Roge. In this channel, I share nuggets on how to thrive in your career, in your personal development. And most recently, I have started sharing my journey towards getting a postgraduate degree or a master's degree, however you choose to talk about it, a master's degree in the UK through a fully funded scholarship, which is the Chevening scholarship. So I'm a Chevening scholar. I should know how to pronounce this. Chevening, you know, potato. Scholar 2024-2025, studying a Masters of Laws in the low carbon just transition. Whenever I say it, people are like, what's that? But it's just a mashup of energy, climate policy together, mostly, you know, geared towards the energy transition anyway, at the University of Dundee, in Dundee, Scotland, the United Kingdom. So in the previous video, I shared about my journey getting to the Chevening scholarship. And the most natural video, the next video that I was to put up was a video around why you should get your master's, or like, should you get your master's? Not even why you should get a master's, but should you get a master's in the first place? And just exploring that, which is a question I really asked myself when I was invited for the Chevening interview, because as discussed in the previous video, you just go ahead and watch it. But I was facing a dilemma because I had another scholarship offer, but also at the same time I had, you know, undergone a good transition actually in my career, and so I was debating about that. So these are things that I really thought about keenly, and I'm going to have that perhaps in the next video. But today is really inspired by the recent events for the people applying to be Chevening scholars for 2025-2026, where people have been invited for interviews. So first of all, congratulations, big congratulations. And this is a first. Like, I rarely record things in real time. So most of the times it's like, oh yeah, in this time, it's like 3 months ago, that's when I recorded. So this is such a real-time video, and I feel the need to actually record this as a way, also selfishly, like when I'm asked for tips, to send just this link, and then if you have any other questions you can answer, so I'm more effective even in my responses. But also it may help a future applicant, not necessarily for this particular cohort. So that's why I'm creating this, really. But people have been invited for interview. Congratulations. It's such a big thing for you to have been shortlisted among thousands and thousands, and down to most countries it's hundreds, and other countries it's actually in 20s. And it's something I got shocked about when I was preparing for my interview, which I'm going to talk about as I proceed with this video. Also a disclaimer. First of all, the views expressed here are my own views and not that of the FCDO or the Chevening Secretariat. They are my own views. And also, as you listen to this, and I want to say, and I've just got right into the video already, but as you listen to this content, and as you even listen to more resources that you're going to listen to on YouTube, or going to read in people's blogs, or on LinkedIn, all these things, I would really encourage you to also exercise independent thinking and take things with a pinch of salt, and also know that your particular experience is also going to be unique, and so don't feel the pressure to sort of copy and paste everything. Exercise your independent thinking as you think through things. And also, the fact that you're already at this stage, it means that you already have a chance at getting the scholarship. And I tend to think, and I think even if it's not true, it's a very good way to think about it. If there was enough money, probably you would have just gotten into it. There will be no need for a shortlist, but because of, you know, scarce resources, then they need to cut off further. But you are definitely a Chevening scholar material, walking in that confidence, but also humility at the same time, so that then you're also exerting yourself in the preparation. Tips on how to that interview with Chevening. I'll start with this, even before I go to, do this, do that. This is like any other normal interview. And one of the things that I have realized as I have done other interviews, I'm not talking about scholarship interviews, but as I have done even job interviews, the interviews where I have come in to just have conversation, and it has been conversational. I have enjoyed those interviews, and also the outcome has always been positive. But for the interviews where I have been very tense and I just go in and it's like I need to get everything right, like I come with a perspective of I have to be right, I have to get it right, and there's so much pressure that I put to myself to do that, are the interviews that I flopped. It could be coincidence, it could be all that, but I think there is something to be said about interviews that are conversational, where you go into a space with a certain confidence and belief that you have something to bring to the table. And so you're going there to just have conversation about your particular journey, and your journey is super unique and all that. So I think the number one tip, and you've probably heard it everywhere, is confidence, but also a belief in your own story. If you don't believe in your own story, if you don't believe that you're a leader, if you don't believe that you have these relationship building skills, if you don't believe that, that I will do this, that this is my career plan, I believe that if you give me this particular opportunity, this is the path that I'm going to take, and this is how I intend to create impact, and I believe it. And it's not just a story that I have placed or written down on paper, because this is like the checklist. If I have not written a career plan, if I've not linked it to what the UK is doing in my home country, or like, the UK priorities and all that, I will not get in. Of course, you also have to align your application to the requirements, but it's not just that. My story is beyond that. It's like, I really want to do this, and I think that we could be partners. And actually seeing like the FCDO, or like the whole, like, the FCDO, the Chevening Secretary, as partners, like, it's a partnership. Yeah, I believe that I bring something to the table, and it will be great for you to have me in your corner as your partner, because this is what I have done previously, this is what I'm capable of, and I believe in that. So that does a lot to your confidence. That does a lot to your confidence, 100%. So do not be very stuck up to be like, oh, do they want this? Do they want this? Of course, look at your story, read your story again, read your essays to get again, reflect on who you want to be and how this aligns to this opportunity, and articulate it as that. But don't be very stuck up to getting it right 100%. And you're going to see why that is really important with my own particular experience with the interview process. So believe in yourself, believe in your story. If you believe in your story, like, someone will be like, oh my God, I can't wait for you to do that. Because then there's a huge passion and a belief that you have in your own particular story. So that's number one. Number two, you've had it, but maybe I need to say it again so that you may hear it, and you may hear it and hear it again. The Chevening website. I know you most likely looked at the Chevening website a lot during the essay application process, but there are a lot of articles and tips that are there to be able to help you to prepare yourself for the interview. So read them in and out. Read them. There are so many resources out there on YouTube. Even people doing mock interviews. I know of Kuseme Ise. I'm going to link down all the resources actually down below, and I plan to have like a video that goes deep down into the resources that exist for sort of like preparing yourself for the Chevening application. But for this particular video, I'm going to link down all those videos that were very instrumental for me. And I want to say this, that the reason why it's important for you to listen, sometimes it's not even for you to cram things and all that. It's for you to be able to continuously hear what are the common mistakes, and hear them again, so that when you're in your interview and you make that mistake, you're able to catch yourself. And that really helped me a lot. Let me use an example. When you're doing the leadership essay, you probably heard that you're supposed to sort of use I did this, I, and not we, because then you're trying to show yourself how you stand out, how you are a leader. And I had it over and over again when we were doing the mock interviews, which I'm going to get into. Like, I would hear it over and over again when I would join sessions, like, if there were, like, for instance, what is it called, like Zoom sessions that were being organized by previous collab. When I was that was something that was being said over and over again about the leadership questions that you were going to be asked. And so because of that, I remember I was asked a particular question, and this question was, and I'm going to go into depth about that particular question. I was asked a question that was framed in a way that it wasn't exactly the essay question, if that makes sense. It was a question around relationship building, but it wasn't a question where I would answer with the examples I wrote during my essay. So I needed to sort of use another example. And because of that, because I was literally now thinking on my feet and thinking about this scenario and trying to articulate it in, the terms in which we ought to articulate it in terms of the STAR approach, I realized I was saying a lot of we. So I was like, oh, so we did this. And then I realized it. And because I had sort of known that this is not required. So that knowledge is so important for you to have that head knowledge, because when you sleep, you're able to pick yourself up. And this is the thing with confidence and seeing this as a conversation. You won't be like, oh, no, I've messed it up, and then you stop. You're able to catch yourself in the track. So for me, when I realized I was just saying we, and I paused. And I said, and actually my contribution was, and I went, so I did this. And I remember one of the panelists smiling, and I knew it. I knew they had been, okay, this is just a wee story. And then, I was able to catch myself that way. So it is important for you to immerse yourself in these resources. If you have a full-time job, so I had a full-time job, I was having a lot of other things that I was doing, and I was actually in a new role. So there was a lot of learning I was doing. There was a lot of energy and exertion that I needed to put into my full-time job and the other things and other endeavors that I normally do. So what really helped me was this. During the weekends, there will be a lot of sort of like mock interviews, preparation sessions, or things like that. Join those groups. Like, look for those groups that exists either on WhatsApp, or like go on Facebook, because on so many Facebook groups, if you hear, oh, there's this link on Twitter, there were so many spaces. Listen to them over the weekends. Most of the times they will happen over the weekends. And then another thing is that when I would take walks, so I was doing taking my steps in the evening after work or something like that, I would always have a YouTube video. When I'm doing my, not my laundry, sometimes my laundry, but if I'm doing like washing utensils or cooking, or like in the morning, like that became the thing I listened to over and over again. At some point, even people back at home were like, oh, yule msichana wa Chevening, like that is the lady for Chevening, in terms of that I have had her speak, especially because I was listening to a lot of Kuseme, because Kuseme had so many videos with people interviewing and sharing their own interview experience, Chevening interview experience. So that really helped me. So surround yourself with so much information on the tips and all that. And sometimes it's not even just sitting down and you're taking tips if you don't have that time. It's continuously listening. It gets into your subconscious. So you're able to also not just make mistakes that you could actually avoid by listening to these pieces of content. So look for resources online and join those groups. So for me, and I'm going to go in terms of like my Chevening preparation process. I was following this lady on Instagram, and I'm going to link her link below. I think she's called Mia, if I'm not pronouncing it wrongly, but she's a Chevening scholar. I think she's 2021, 2022. She was at the University of Glasgow. Her handle is My Chevening Journey on Instagram. And so she had created this Google spreadsheet where she would have like, what is it called? She would have information on people. So you would input your information, your course and all that. And then there would be like mock interviews every weekend by other alumni who would come. So I joined the first, and the first one I wasn't going like to do a mock interview, but I just joined to listen in, get tips and all that. And one of the tips that really helped me was the guy said that he recorded himself reading the essays. And that really helped me. Also, like as a YouTuber, podcaster, I've done radio and all that. I think recording myself sounded like such a brilliant idea. But the thing is, it helped me re-listen to my essays again. It's been a while since you wrote your essays. You know your story, of course, you know your stories, but there are details you may have missed. But as you listen to your story more and more, you will identify gaps. It really helped me that and be like, oh, I have identified this gap. So in case this comes up, I will have this alternative example. Or I didn't think through the lessons that I learned because of the word count. Actually, I didn't put in my essay, oh, and this is the lesson that I learned. But just reflecting on the lessons and all that. So I actually read out the essays to myself and I recorded it on my phone. So sometimes even as I wash the dishes, I'll just listen to myself reading my essays to myself. And that helped me internalize what I had written as my story. So that was such a wonderful tip. But also, Mia and the Chevening journey, when you put your details there, you're put into categories. So if you're doing a law LLM, then you will be grouped together. So like you'll be put in a WhatsApp group and you're 9, and then among yourselves you decide how you are going to do mock interviews for each other. So you become interviewers and interviewees, and through that I actually came across a lot of it was a bank of questions for Chevening, so sort of like the commonly asked questions, they have been put together. So there was so much so we will use that actually document to ask ourselves questions and then give each other feedback. And I love the kind of sisterhood and brotherhood that came out of that. And actually 3 or 4 of us eventually got the scholarship. We haven't met, but probably we'll meet at the farewell or something. I should probably, ask those guys when I meet. But we so happened I'm in Scotland and others are in London and others are in other parts. But that was so helpful. So doing that, and we'll do that almost every night or every Wednesday and Saturday, and interview each other. And after everyone, when you come out of your interview, say, oh, these were the questions I was asked. Of course, they were in different countries. And that's where I learned there were people who were like, what the people shortlisted interview were like 20, because some countries are smaller and things like that. But that was super helpful. So I would say also, like, know yourself. Like, I knew that small group worked for me. I don't know how I'll do with a bigger crowd, and especially a bigger crowd where a lot of people are in my country and it feels like, oh, this is competition. I don't know, like, to each their own. Everything works differently for everyone. So for me, this small group felt okay for me, and it felt like, oh yeah, I can manage this. But also, even as you do your interview, as is with the essay, one thing that really helped me, like, I assumed, and it's not like I said, oh, now I'm assuming. When I look back, I didn't think a lot about the numbers. I didn't think a lot about, oh, so what are my chances? Is it 1% or 0.05%? I didn't think about that. I thought about my story, and I aimed to do my best in my preparation and just give it my best. So I think that will be a very important mindset to have, because if you do not have that mindset, it's going to be very difficult to maneuver the pressures, and you will then end up going into an interview being very robotic. And talking about being robotic, at the end of the day, I just feel like, and this is my own personal opinion, there can be a moment where you have done too much of the mock interviews that you're now a robot and you're just being very robotic. And it's one of the things that we will pick out even among each other in the mock interviews, where you will be like, we used to tell each other, no, you are just, you are robotic in how you answered your questions, or like you it seemed rehearsed, it didn't seem like you're in calm, it seems that you're trying to remember these details and all that, it's like you've crammed it. And it shows, and it doesn't, you're not able to go through to your interviewer, and you want to go through to them that they will even ask things out of script, not just to catch you off guard, but because they are really interested in your story, and you have caught their interests in that sense. So I would say there's a certain, for me, I felt like 3 mock interviews were enough for me. It may be different for everyone, like 3 so that it's not too much, but also it's not like I've underprepared. I've not tried to articulate my story out loud to people and see how I'm able to do that. So that was so important for me. But also at the same time, I have my notes. That's why I'm looking down. That's so important. So let me share about my experience and then maybe wrap up. I hope I've not... Oh, and also like the sample interview questions, I'm going to... I hope I remember, but I'm going to put a Google Drive link and upload all the questions that I have so far, materials that I have down below, and you can use that to practice on your own. So I would say this, my experience was, as I said, I was unwell on that day, but I pushed myself. My interview was like at midday. My interview took 15 minutes, and I really thank God I wasn't like, I didn't ask other people how long it was taking, because maybe I would have been like, no way I'm getting this, because that's pretty short. But I was asked, I would say 5 questions. So I was asked, of course, about, tell me, a scenario where you have been a leader or you have influenced change, things like that. That's question 1, essay question. So I asked, of course, you use the STAR approach. The second one was around relationship building. But this was the twist, and this is why I feel like don't rehearse so much that you've already cramped and you already think that this is what they're going to ask. Because what that does to you, even if they ask a question and they have twisted it into another angle, you won't be able to pick that and you won't be able to think on your feet. So for instance, for me, it wasn't like, tell me a scenario where you built a relationship and you're able to, be able to create impact through that. No, it was instances where I've brought, so it was a mashup of leadership and networking, the second question. So it was like instances where I've brought people together to create impact and have leverage on my networks. Now, all the examples I gave for relationship building for me were not in that way. It was more, actually all the three, apart from maybe the last one, all the first two were mostly me being at a place, or like the one was online, another one was offline. So like, for instance, how I met my mentor through LinkedIn, how we connected, how I then ended up on her mentorship, or ended up now volunteering, where I volunteer in her organization and talking about what we have been able to do together. So it was more from that angle, but it wasn't now bringing people together in that sense. But I had had such experience before, of which I had thought about it when I was identifying what other examples would I have for leadership. Think through that. Think through what other additional backup examples would I have. So, and a friend of mine actually asked me, has been shortlisted for the interview, so he was asking me, is it old examples or new examples? And I would say just have a mashup of the both. Also, you don't want to not speak to anything that was in your essay, because how do we know that you're the one who wrote that essay? But at the same time, if you ask questions that are nuanced and are not, and your examples do not fit that, then you will have something that is a backup to be able to do that. So that was really helpful for me. And so I brought that example in, and I was able to articulate it. And that's the example I was saying, we, and I caught myself. And I was like, and so my contribution was, and I was able to catch myself. And actually, another way I was able to catch myself was the third question on studying in the UK. So I was asked, why do you want to study in the UK, and where have you chosen the universities you have chosen? And I went ahead and I started with talking about, why I want to study in the UK. I went to my first example, I went to my second example. But when I was talking about my second example, I realized this. There are two things I hadn't mentioned in my first example. So in my first example, I talked about the modules. I had talked about, I had talked about the modules, and had talked about that I wanted to visit McManus Art Gallery and Museum in Dundee. But I didn't talk about the Center for Energy and Petroleum, which is so important. And as was in the second example, I remembered. But because I wasn't, in a thing of like, oh no, I've messed up. And, I was able to like pick myself up. I think that relaxation and that confidence helped me pick myself up. So I was able to be like, oh, I've not said. And I said, and actually in my first example, there's something very important that I have forgotten that I think is so important for me to highlight. And they all smiled and one laughed, actually. It's like, yeah, and I went back to it, and I was able to pick myself, and I explained. And my career it was the normal question for career, short term, mid term, and long term. And I was very keen to talk about in each of the essays. Sorry, it seems like I'm all over the place, but in each of the essays, I was very keen to always tie it back. The way in the conclusion of the essay, we were saying tie it back to the Chevening Scholarship, tie it back to the Chevening Scholarship. I was able to now tie it back each time. So trying to show that this is my plan, but I cannot be able to do this plan if you guys don't give me the scholarship, because this scholarship enables me to access this and this and this. It also enables me to do this and this and this. So that was really important for me to do throughout. And so I did that for the career plan. And then the other question that came that was, not among the four was like, I was asked, mostly you hear you being asked, what is the UK doing in your home country? But for my question, it was, what is the UK doing in the UK in your field of study? What is the UK doing? And so then it was really important to be able to understand. So my course is around energy transition, net zero, which is something that the UK is really keen about. They even have a target year for that, and they also have a lot of things they were doing. And also it helped that this is my line of work, so I was interacting with a lot of this news as I went about work. So I immediately remembered about how they are trying to green the grids and things like that, and so I went on and on and on and on. So it's important for you to also, the way you are researching what the UK is doing, get recent information, follow those Instagram pages for the UK in Kenya, follow those, constantly feed yourself with information so that you have very recent information. It shows that you're up to speed. So don't be using like, oh, the strategy of 2020. No. Like, look at what have they done in the past week that relates to you. And if there is something, be sure to mention that. Be very keen to mention that for sure. I think, yeah, that's it. And I would say, as a believer, for me, committing my plans to God was super important for me. And if you're a believer, I think it's important for you to do that he may guide you. And if this is his plan for you, that it will not be cut short and your expectations will not be cut short. But finally, after all is said and done, after you've consumed all those information and all that, and I hope there's nothing that I have forgotten, I think it's important to know that your journey is your journey and it is super unique. And understand yourself and understand what works for you, what doesn't work for you. You don't have to go by someone's scripts of people's scripts. And that does not mean, I won't read the Chevening website, or I will not try to find out what works and what doesn't work. No, but just moving in a way, knowing that how unique your journey is and believing that there is beauty in the uniqueness of your journey. And that is going to give you a lot of confidence. And yeah, I wish you all the very best in your preparation, in your interview. I wish you all the very best, and I hoped to welcome you when I'll be an alumni as you become a Chevening scholar in whatever cohort, but most specifically because I'm recreating this in 2025 for the 2025-2026 scholars. And yes, that's it from me. If you have any questions, actually drop them in the comment section. If you're shy to put it on a public platform, you can follow me on Instagram, anjoroge.ke. I actually share my my Chevening journey. I'm sharing it in real time, mostly like every month I recap what it looks like, because that's one of the things that I realized that I wasn't seeing a lot. So in terms of what does it then look when you're on that side, like what does it look to be a Chevening scholar, and what does it look at the day-to-day of being being in a university in the UK. So you can follow me. Also, you can subscribe in this YouTube channel. I'm going to also be creating much more content on my postgraduate degree journey, and I have a lot of content actually on careers, and there's a career option series that I just completed, so you can go ahead and consume that. And yeah, or email me mumbinjoroge32@gmail.com or info@njoroge.co.ke. So yeah, you can either use the Gmail or the info email. Either will do. And yeah, so thank you so much for watching this video. I hope it's helpful. I hope it's not, you are not listening and you're like, oh, that's so cliche. But yeah, even if it's cliche, please follow that cliche advice, okay? Until next time, bye bye.